Hi everyone, welcome to another week of trail runs we're here on YouTube and on the podcast as well. And this week I'm joined by a guest who I've got, Katie Kaars. I'm going to say Sijpesteijn, is that right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
I've been trying to spot up on that one. I'm glad I got it right. Katie's an ultra trail and mountain runner. And she's going to tell us a bit about her journey into running and what she's been up to and keeping motivated. How are you doing, Katie, during this lockdown that we're in, the third one now?
Yeah, I feel like I know how it works now. So I've got my ways to keep motivated and feeling okay. Just grateful for what we can do, I guess. Thinking about the things we can do rather than things that we can't do.
Yeah, exactly. It is tricky, but at least people like us who are into running can still get out and make the most of being outside, which is good. I don't know about you, but I'd go pretty stir crazy if I couldn't run and get some sort of decent exercise in, or I don't know, if we were limited on distance or time as well. I think I find that quite challenging.
Yeah, I think we've been lucky in that way, that we haven't been too limited.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm keen to hear a bit about your running journey and over time, because you've done some pretty, what I'd say are incredible events, and you're sort of, and I say incredible and also challenging events, and it's like you've kind of gone up, you've sort of found your where you're sort of comfortable, and it's a sort of running that I guess not many people are exposed to, getting into the mountain running and some of the routes that you've run on around the world. So how did you get into doing some of the I guess, where did you start, and how did it transform into mountain running? I guess you didn't go out straight away and decide to run up mountains, but
no, certainly not. Although mine and Casper's first date was up a mountain. Well, it was up Pen y Ghent, which is a smaller mountain in the Dales. But I guess I've run since I was a teenager. So I'd always done sort of track events and stuff at school. I wasn't particularly very good, but I liked doing it. Then I guess 800 meters at school is long distance. So I was always into the longer distance. And then through like early 20s, I sort of ran, I jogged on the road. I'd never been off-road running. And it wasn't until I met Casper, my now husband, that he was quite a big hill walker.
Okay.
And so I guess part way in between hill walking and road running becomes hill running. So that's where we kind of came together and started trail running. So that's sort of how it started, maybe about 10 years ago now.
Okay.
And then we did our first event together, which was my first trail race, was the Lakeland 50. Which straight sort of into that event. Those sort of but you could do it, I think you still can. We did it as a pair, and so it was sort of, it was this big challenge we were going to do together. It wasn't a plan to get into ultra running. We just sort of thought let's do this thing. And so that's sort of how we got into original sort of trail running. And then it was maybe sort of, I did quite a lot of the Hardmoors events, which are in the North York Moors. And I guess over time, I sort of realised my strength was running downhill. Okay. I'd often get like dropped on the uphills, but then on the downhills, I would just sort of gain loads and loads of time. And so then I think that's how I sort of got into I actually really like running down, and the more technical it was, the more I enjoyed it. So then I'd heard a little bit about sky running, but I didn't really know what it was, but then sort of tried out some of those events and realized that running fast down really steep hills was what gave me sort of the biggest buzz. And I just sort of I guess that was what I was better at. The more technical, the better I am. And so I think, but I enjoyed it as well. So I think that mixture just sort of, I then started looking for the most technical races to do, which then, I ended up doing things in like Tromsø in Norway, because that's sort of known as one of the most technical ones. And we've got some of the best ones in the UK as well, like the Lake Sky Ultra and Glencoe Skyline. And so, I just really like that it's not just monotonous running at the same speed all the time. I think that's what I like about it. So that's kind of, it just sort of developed from always kind of running, getting into trail running, and then realizing what part of running I was better at.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you went in and did the Lakeland 50, I mean, that's not an easy one to start with for your first race. At that point, were you daunted? Like, was the distance daunting, or was there anything?
I think it was. I mean, I've always sort of got this mindset of like, I can do whatever like I plan to do, which is sometimes not a good thing. But if I sort of want to do something, I never sort of feel like I can't do something. I just think as long as you've got a plan, you can do a lot of stuff, as long as you plan it out. I mean, when I look back, because when we did that in 2011, we did the Lakeland 50. I've done it since then, but the first time we did it, I look at photos and I'm like, what was I wearing? I was wearing like some really aggressive shoes, like quite hard aggressive shoes, which, it's not really suitable for 50 miles. I had like a big 20-litre rucksack on. I had some running kit from, Sports Direct on, and but you just learn. And I think it never ever crossed my mind that I wouldn't finish it, because I knew what's quite nice about that event is you've got 24 hours to do it. So, the winners do it in 8 hours, but you can walk it. You can walk 50 miles in 24 hours. So I just sort of thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? I have to walk. And so luckily I didn't have to walk too much, but I mean, I walked quite a lot of it that first time. But I think it was just that Casper was very experienced in terms of, eat, drink, keep moving. And he sort of taught me a lot. I think it would have been a different experience if we hadn't done the whole thing together. But I think he kept me motivated a lot. And I learned that you don't run 50 miles purely off sugar, because that doesn't really work. You need to have some proper food in you and stuff. But I love looking back on like that first race and thinking, how inexperienced I was and how much I've learned since then. But I never thought I wouldn't finish.
No, it's quite interesting. And I think we've all got those photos from our early races. I found, I put on Instagram last year of like my first ultra, where I looked totally unprepared. All the wrong kit that I just wouldn't. But I think it's definitely something about the mindset of ultra runners that take on these challenges, is that you've got this belief that you can do it, and I think that's what helps to keep us going and looking for new challenges as well. What's your sort of longest distance that you've done?
So I've done the Lakeland 100 twice.
Okay.
And also I've done the Hardmoors 110, which is actually 113 miles. So that's a full loop of the Cleveland Way.
Yeah.
But actually the first time I did the Lakeland 100 took longer, because there's much more ascent in the Lakeland 100 than there is in the Hardmoors.
Yeah. I've not done any of the Hardmoors events actually. I need to try and do them. Whenever I go to look at them, they're just sold out. I think they sell out.
Yeah. It's amazing, really, because when we first started 10 years ago, that was, I did loads of those, and it was easy to get in. But now, I mean, it's fantastic that there's so many people running them. But you're right. I think it's one of those, like the Lakeland 50, you've got to be there on the opening day. Otherwise it's full.
Definitely. the Lakeland's gone into like a ballot now, hasn't it? I think.
Oh, has it? Oh, that's interesting.
I think the last year, well, I didn't go ahead last year, but for 2020, it was kind of names go in, and then they pull them out of the hat. I think, from what I remember.
Yeah,
there's so much demand for it now, which is a great thing. And did I read somewhere that you've done like over 1,000 miles of the Hardmoors? Is that true?
Yeah, so there's a special club called the Hardmoors 1000 Club. Right. So basically, once you've run 1,000 race miles, they have to all be race miles that you've finished. You can't, if you stop during an event for whatever reason, you get to join a club. So you get a special number. So I now have a number with my name on, and it says the 1,000 Mile Club. Oh, awesome. And you get a hoodie as well. Oh no, so it's a fleece you get, which it says, it's got your name embroidered on, and it says 1,000 Mile Club. So it's really nice because it gives people, I guess, a target. You could take twice as long. One person could take twice as long to do those miles as the other. Like, time or placing has no bearing on it. It's just, have you run those race miles, which is, I think, is quite a good motivator for people. I think there's some people who've done like 2,000 and 3,000 now. So, but I don't think there's a special club for that. I think once you hit the 1,000, that's it. Yeah.
That's gosh. It's an impressive achievement, doing that many on, within those events, and they're not easy events either. So
no, they're tough. Some of them are in the winter. So there's a 55-mile one, which is normally in March. So the weather can be quite changeable in that one. And then there's one on New Year's Day, which is 30, which that can be quite cold, but it doesn't go as high. The 55-mile has had some quite bleak weather in times, and John Steele, who organises the events, it's great. I mean, obviously he always does it under safe conditions, but he'll only pull the race if it really does need to be pulled. So it's quite good. He puts all the right things in place to make sure it's safe, but that's part of the experience. Trying to wade through like 5-foot snowdrifts, and where's the trail, because that happened on one year, which was it was great fun.
That's gosh, that sounds pretty hardcore. Are you more of a winter runner or a summer runner? What
I do like running in bad weather. I just I really struggle with the heat. So, I love some of these like overseas races, and they're fantastic, but I always struggle. I mean, it's beautiful when you can just run in vest and shorts, but I do like running in some elements. So, and one year I ran the lakes in a day in brutal weather, but I just loved it. Like, it's just, I don't know. I just think if you've got the right kit and you're moving at a decent speed and you're experienced in that weather, as long as you don't wait till you're cold, and you don't wait till you're hungry till you eat, I just think it's okay. And I think it helps you focus, because it's just like head down, just keep moving.
Yeah, possibly, actually. I mean, I've done the Lakeland 100 twice, and both times we've had sort of torrential rain, and when I did the Bob Graham as well up there, half of that was just in torrential rain.
Oh, and really?
I think there is something about like having the wind, the fog, the rain. It does just make you push on, and you're not even thinking about the challenge or what's ahead of you, because you've just got something taking your mind off it, and you just, it's kind of head down and get on with it. I quite like, and it is quite exhilarating running in wild conditions.
I think it's a special kind of feeling, but I think even if you're just training or if it's a race, I get this feeling when it was really bad weather. I always think, oh God, I'm so lucky to be here. Like that I can, I've got the mental strength and the physical ability to be out in this weather. And I just sort of, I think on a nice sunny day, you sort of like, oh, this is lovely, isn't this pretty? But I think I almost feel more grateful in the bad weather. And I just sort of think, because you maybe feel more isolated because, you know, inevitably there's going to be less people around when it's bad weather. And you just sort of, maybe it's more sort of, you feel sort of more survival mode because you think, oh, you've got to keep your wits about you because, you know, navigation and, you know, depending on what you're doing, you need to keep an eye on.
No, that's true. It adds a different dimension to it. And yeah, there's a lot said for having the right kit as well. I think if the kit gives you confidence, and then yeah, you can just kind of get on with it. But I'd rather take a day of sun over a day of rain.
Would you? Yeah.
I don't mind the heat too much, but it does get hard on the long races in the in the sun. So you're based in Leeds, right? Is that
right? Yeah, just north of Leeds. Yeah.
Okay. So where do you tend to do a lot of your training for the mountains and getting in the sort of hill work?
So I can tell you what I did pre-2020, and then I can tell you what I've done for the last year, because it looks very, very different.
Yeah.
So before coronavirus, I would spend at least 3 out of 4 weekends in the lakes. It's a 2-hour drive from Leeds. You know, whether I stayed overnight or just went for the, you know, it was easy to do in a day trip. Spent loads of time, probably slightly less than that in 2019, but in 17 and 18 we were there a lot. And it never seemed an effort because it was just sort of Friday night after work, get in the car, you know, we knew we had the bag already sorted from the week before, you know, you just knew what you're doing. But that was when I was doing quite a bit more of the longer and more technical like races. And then and actually it was before I started with a coach at the start of 2019. And so my training became more like specific sessions, whereas pre 2019 I would literally just go out and just run, you know, literally all weekend. You know, I'd do, you know, back on back, 5 hours, I would do 10 hours over the weekend and no real plan. We'd just be like, you feeling all right? Yeah, okay, let's go another hour. You know, it was, you know, totally random. But during the week, I would run from home. I'm lucky that we're sort of North Leeds, so there's lots of trails nearby. I mean, I say it's flat, but you know, you would probably be great, you know, like, oh, it's hilly. But you know, in an hour I can get in, you know, from home, local trail for an hour, I can get in 200 meters if I didn't try to find the hills. But I'll talk about lockdown loops in a moment. But you can, you know, I could find a place where I could get 500 meters an hour from home, but that, you know, it wasn't your lovely scenic Lakeland run. So yeah, before lockdown, lots of time in the lakes. Although the North York Moors and the Dales is closer, like the Yorkshire Dales, it would still be sort of like an hour to get right into those. So we just sort of thought, well, you might as well just go another hour and get to the lakes.
I guess it's kind of a bit more specific to the races that you're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely, like the technical stuff.
Yeah.
But then of course we got to 2020 and everything changed. But you know, I just dealt with what I had, and I live next to a very big park actually called Roundhay Park in Leeds, which is like 2 minutes walk away, and there is some little hills in there, and over I could get, they were what I call my lockdown loops, and I could get 500, no, I think it was 400 meters, because I could, over 2 hours, I could get 800 meters in. But that would be like 10 laps, 10 loops. And it was a real contrived loop, because I'd literally be trying to find all the little bumps and lumps in the park. But, you know, like, it didn't seem that bad, because again, I just sort of thought, well, I looked at places like France and Italy, you know, when Italy couldn't go out at all, and France had this 1 kilometer radius, you know, limit, and so it didn't seem that bad. And it soon got to like May, when they said, you know, you could drive a short distance to to go and train, and so then I could sort of go a bit more into the dales and stuff. And I think it was by sort of end of June this, it was acceptable to drive to the lakes. Obviously not stay over, but it didn't seem too bad. But I've never, my local trails now, I've never known them so well. Like, I always used to run on them, but I have discovered new paths, but now I find myself like doing the different way around, doing a slightly different, like trying to contrive a slightly different route just so you don't get too bored. But I'm lucky there's, you can do a 3 or 4 hour run from home and just be totally on trail, which is, it is nice, because I do feel for the people who live, in a big city or, central London, for example, like at the moment, it just must be really, really hard. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I'm similar in that I can be out on the trails straight away, which is great. And this morning, actually, I ran a loop that I normally always run the same way. I ran it in reverse because I was looking for something different to do. Just for that little bit of difference, so I can totally understand where you're coming from with that. But yeah, I think it's, hopefully it won't be for too long at the moment. But because I seem to remember last year you did manage to sort of get away for a bit and even got a bit of racing in.
I was I was quite lucky, really. So I managed to do Trans-Gran Canaria, the marathon distance, which was like early March. Okay. And that was when, coronavirus was this thing that was happening in China and Italy, and the UK was we were just like carrying on as normal. And I flew back home like literally a few days before lockdown happened, and it was the flight company I flew back to Manchester. They then didn't lift off again to go back to the Canary Islands. Like, I was literally on the last flight, like normal flight home. So that was a fantastic race. And I spent a week out there. I went straight to do the race, the end of a busy week of work. So it wasn't, I enjoyed the race, and I feel lucky now that I got out there. And I actually then hopped over to one of the other islands to recce Transvolcania, because the plan was in May to do Transvolcania, which was obviously then postponed and then ultimately cancelled for last year. So that was really nice. I got to recce and got to spend a week of winter sun, which is always nice, early March. And then of course lockdown happened and all plans were scrapped, because the plan was to do that and Mont Blanc and then CCC, and obviously they all ultimately, as time went on, got cancelled. And so then sort of midsummer, when we got to sort of July time, when we could travel, and there was limitations in terms of the travel corridor, whether you had to quarantine when you came home. So Casper and I spent quite a lot of time tracking COVID rates around Europe to sort of see if we could see some kind of pattern of when COVID rates like peaked, and then when the UK government then added them to the quarantine list. So we were like doing all this tracking, and we thought Switzerland was probably a safe bet, because the rates were low, they were containing it, and even if it then peaked, it would then be a lag before they put it onto the quarantine list. Okay. So we took the risk and got a place at the Matterhorn Ultrax, which was I think it was like mid-August. So we went out 2 weeks before, because it went up to like 3,000 meters, and I'm always terrible with altitude, so I was like, I'm definitely going to go and acclimatize and just to sort of help a bit in the race. And one of the advantages of lockdown is that, of course, we're all working from home. So I checked with my boss that I'm still working from home. I just happen to be in a Swiss campsite. So, and Casper was the same. So because of course it's always a bit awkward, because if you go away before a race, you've got all these mountains, you want to go running crazy, but you've obviously got to rest a little bit before the race. So it didn't make sense to totally take all the holiday, because I wouldn't be able to do that much running each day. So we found this beautiful campsite in Switzerland, and just sort of sat there we'd go out for a run in the morning, and then work in the afternoon. Nice. And just to sort of acclimatise, and did the race. It was slightly odd because it wasn't like your usual everyone's crushed together at the start. There was waves and stuff in the start. Yeah. But once the race started, it just felt totally normal, felt like a normal race. Yeah. And it was fantastic. I'd really recommend it. It's a beautiful, beautiful race. Yeah, really enjoyed it. And then we drove there, and whilst we were there, they added the Netherlands and France to the quarantine list. Right. And of course, to get back to the UK by car, you've got to go through one of those countries. Yeah. But there was a loophole in the legislation in that you could drive through France and get on you couldn't go in a ferry because that classes as then you've mixed with people who've been in France. But on the Eurostar, as long as you stayed in your car and you didn't get out of the car whilst you were driving through France, you were safe and you didn't have to quarantine. Because the last thing we wanted to do was get home and have to stay at home for 2 weeks. Yeah, definitely. So we had a very long drive through France where we couldn't stop, which was hard, but we made it, and got home. And then I think 5 days after we got home, they added Switzerland to the quarantine list. Wow. So we were really lucky there. Yeah. And so, but then I kind of, once you've done the first race of the year, you kind of get the race book and you're like, right, what other races are on? So I found this race called the Meyerhofen Ultrax in Austria. Okay. And so booked that, and managed to get a flight to Germany. But between planning to go and going, they added Austria to the quarantine list. I was like, I really want to go. So got to Austria, did the race, which was fine because I was allowed to go in from the UK. Yeah. But then I couldn't return to the UK without having to quarantine. I had to be in a quarantine-free country for 2 weeks. Okay. So then straight after the race, I then got the train over to Italy, and then found a place to stay in Italy for 2 weeks and worked there because I could carry on working again. It didn't matter where I was. Yeah. And so, but then all the same time watching the COVID rates in Italy, because at any moment they could have added Italy to the quarantine list. Luckily they didn't, but every day I was like, oh, maybe they will, but they didn't. And so I stayed for 2 weeks in Italy, and then I flew home and didn't have to quarantine because I'd done 2 weeks in a quarantine-free country. So yes, I managed to race, but I was dodging quarantine and the whole time, and I spent a lot of time looking at statistics over rates to work out where we can go. It wasn't just luck that we didn't have to quarantine and were able to do it. It was very well planned and strategic.
Hey, it sounds like a lot of planning.
Yeah, I did feel like a fugitive in when I went over to Italy, and I was staying in this little this mountain hut place, working. I feel like I was all it was all legal what I was doing, but I did feel a bit of a fugitive, but that was about as exciting as an accountant's life gets. Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. What time of year was that one?
So that was September. That was early September. So that was just a few weeks after we'd been in Switzerland, and then of course it all started sort of happening again. And so I felt quite lucky that I'd managed to get those few races in last year.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And one races you'd recommend?
Oh yeah, definitely. The Meyerhofen one is quite a new race. I think it was only the second year running. Yeah, beautiful area of Austria. It's in the Austrian Alps, but I'd never been to that area. And I think actually so the race I did was 50k. And they also had a 30k, but for next year they're adding mine was called the long course, but they're adding a super long. Okay. So I don't know if it's maybe it's 100k. I'm not sure, but I know they're adding a longer one as well. But really, I can't remember the name of the actual village itself. Maybe it was Meyerhofen, or that was the valley. But yeah, a really beautiful place.
I do know that area actually. I've been in the summer and winter, but as a
Okay.
bit of a non-runner. So I'd like
Okay.
to
Yeah.
go back now and do a bit of running over there because it is beautiful.
Yeah.
And as much as I like sort of snowboarding, I think the summers in the Alps are incredible. Especially now as a runner. Yeah, it's one of the places I'd love to get to. And the Matterhorn one, how far is that? Around 50k, is it? Or
yeah, that was 50k and 4,000 meters.
Okay.
Which I think they may happen was about the same proportions. But so although 50k doesn't sound that long, I think I can't remember. I think it was maybe 6.5 hours.
Yeah.
You know, time wise because of the climb. But that was a beautiful race. Really, really, really nice. Got a clear day, so you kind of do a loop. I know you don't actually go a loop of the Matterhorn. You kind of run past it, but you see it for a lot of the race, which is it's really beautiful. And it just sort of, I'd never been to that area before, and it just sort of wherever you are, sort of in the valley, the Matterhorn is sort of looking over you. It's really sort of, you know, what makes the valley. It's really nice. And the race was, you know, as you'd expect of the Swiss, it was super well organized, and you know, everything happened when they said it was going to happen, and you know, it's all I like it when it works well as well.
Oh, nice. I'll have to check that out. The Matterhorn is a fantastic mountain. So yeah, that'd be a cool one to do. So you went and set the record on the Abraham T round in the Lake District. Is that right? That's something you did.
Yeah, it's subsequently been broken, the record. So I'll have to go back and have another go. But yeah, it was a record at the time. But granted, not many people have actually done it. It's quite a new kind of round. So hopefully loads of people will start doing it. But it's nice to it's nice to set a bar for people to aim for. But it's a really, really nice route. You'll probably know some of it. It's a loop from Keswick, and it goes over, and the history of it is there's a cafe called Abraham Tea Room, yes, which is above a shop in Keswick, and it's all the peaks that you can see from the cafe, which is on the top floor. It's a really nice route, and it's quite technical as well, which is nice. And you sort of go over around Derwent Water, over Cats the Hills there, and then sort of up to Robinson, which you'll know well, I'm sure. And then you sort of drop down around Buttermere Lake and the hills on the far side of there, which I didn't really know very well before. So it's quite nice, these kind of routes that appear, because it forces you to go and try new hills you've not been up before, because I'm terrible for just sort of going up the routes I know. But yeah, I'll definitely do it again. It's a lovely route, and it's not too far, so it's not such a big mission, and you know, I just went out on my own and did it. So yeah, definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I was intrigued by that because I hadn't heard of it until you ran it last year. How did that get onto your radar? Is it
I think I wasn't really, I couldn't really get excited by virtual races or FKTs last year. I think you either one of the, there's nothing, I've got nothing against them, but I think people are either into them or they're not.
Yeah.
But FKT or I know FKT gets that whole debate, but you know, who really cares? And I just thought, you know, it was a nice motivator, and it was quite good training for the Matterhorn tracks, because it was steep climbs and quite rough. So I just thought, you know, I might as well, you know, do something. It was nice to do a recognised route. I don't know how I ended up hearing of it actually, but I'd heard about it the year before, but with races and stuff, you know, it doesn't really fit in. But then with last year, there not been much going on, and well, nothing going on in like June and July. It just felt like a good time to do it. So I just thought, you know, by the time you get to August, normally you're sort of race ready because you've done a few races, but because I'd only just done that one race in March, it was quite nice to sort of treat it a bit of a race day and go as light as you can with your kit and practice your food and stuff. So it was because I miss racing. I mean, I know some people don't really like race. I just love doing races. I just love the whole the whole day of doing it. And it was just sort of maybe it was just for my own benefit to just sort of pretend it was a race and just sort of get into that mindset. I just that's what I really, really missed last year and miss now is that racing and that feeling nervous. If it's a big race, that's like it's just in the back of your mind that whole like week or so before. And even what you're eating on the Tuesday and Wednesday, you're eating that in mind for what's happening at the weekend. And just I do miss that kind of that planning and stuff, but it'll come back.
No, definitely. I mean, the events did happen last year. I did 2 in the UK, one in August and one in December actually, so they are still happening, hopefully sooner rather than later. It's funny because some people are a bit not against racing, but they're not bothered about it. But I enjoy it as well. There's that anticipation, and especially doing something new as well that you've not done before, or new route that you've not done before. I think there's something quite nice about that.
Absolutely.
So we'll see when they start coming back. I think they'll look a bit different with the sort of social distance starts and things like that. The Abraham Tea round. I'll have to look it up. How far is it, the distance on that one?
It's around 30 miles, but because you just have to tag the peaks and you can take whichever route you like. So the route I took, I think I only ran about 28 miles.
Okay.
But so it just depends on which lines you take. But if you want to know some lines, let me know. I don't tell everyone them, so I won't talk about them here. But
But
I enjoyed like I practiced. I spent time on the route, and like it was fun, like picking the lines. Which one, and some of them were better at certain times of year, I think, because of the way the bracken grows. Or if it had been raining, and I quite liked that, spending the time on a route and picking which way to go.
Is that do you quite enjoy the sort of planning and the structure? I don't know, going back to what you said about your training, you used to be a bit more ad hoc, and then you sort of structured it, and then planning for races. What do you prefer? Do you prefer the kind of more structured approach to things?
Yeah, well, I like now the structured approach to my training, and I'm an avid recceer. There was once about 8 years ago, I did this race and I didn't recce it, and I went wrong, and I got so cross with myself that I'd gone the wrong way. And I swore to myself, a little fell race is fine because there's so many people. I swore to myself after that, I'm never ever doing an ultra. And it's different in Europe because they're flagged so much and you can't really go wrong. But in the UK, when you need to know where to go, or you need and it was before I had a GPS watch. And I was like, I will always recce a route now. And so I am an avid recceer. And I think I like it some people like the surprise on race day. Like there's someone I know and they're like, oh, I don't like recceing because I just, then it's new on race day. Whereas I like to know what's coming up. I want to know, okay, right, I'm going to walk this hill because I know it's really long, or I know it's just a little hill, so I'm going to run this hill. And I like to know, and I think for me mentally, it just really, really helps to know what's coming up. But that's just me personally. It's not right or wrong, but I'm an avid recceer of routes.
It does take the pressure off. I've gone wrong on routes that I know as well. When you're tired, you just kind of make a mistake. But I can see why you like that. I do sometimes, especially when you're racing. I think if you're in a position where you're against other people and you've got that pressure, it can take the edge off if you know the route. What just going back to your training, what pre sort of COVID, what's your sort of average training week look like? Are you doing a lot of sessions? Are you You do sessions?
So, I mean, obviously it would depend slightly on like the build to races, but on average, I think I was doing about 10 or 11 hours of running.
Okay.
And in that, there'd probably be like 3, sessions, so like hard workouts, but then lots of easy running in between. So like during the week, I might have 1 or 2 sessions and then 1 at the weekend. But then the other days it'd just be easy, like an hour of easy running. And then I do like an hour and a half of strength and conditioning a week as well, which should be split into three like half an hour sessions. Because I used to do I was meant to do like 2 times 1 hour, but I'm not like, some people love strength conditioning, some people don't, and I'm in the don't category. It's like you do it because it's beneficial, and then the thought of an hour of it was just like, oh. But half an hour is totally manageable. Half an hour just seems so much better than half of an hour. So yeah, I would do that in the week. I used to do quite a bit more cycling. I haven't done as much cycling over the last year or so, but not really a conscious effort. Actually, at the start of lockdown, this like March 2020, did quite a lot of cycling, just because you obviously couldn't drive anywhere, and I felt a bit cooped up just going from runs from home. So if you cycle from home, you can go further. So but it wasn't quite the same, because I'm quite if I go, because Casper, my husband's much more of a cyclist, but to me, if you go out cycling all day, you cycle from coffee shop to coffee shop, but of course they weren't open during lockdown, so it was a little bit different. So it was sort of, it wasn't quite the same. But yeah, I kind of go up and down with the cycle. I like cycling, but I kind of do it if I feel I've got spare time between between the running will always come first.
Yeah, sure. Do you think it's beneficial cross-training cycling, if you can?
Yeah, I think so. I swear that's why Casper's a naturally good runner. He's never done that much of run, like specific run training. He does, train hard, but he's got a huge engine from his cycling. And I think the leg strength as well. Obviously it's slightly different muscles, but I do think it's good for sort of endurance cycling. And of course it's get the volume without the impact as well.
Yeah, I think that's a massive benefit, especially if you're doing a lot of a lot of volume in your running, or running downhills. You're like getting a lot of impact. Which takes me back to something you said earlier about how you found you were really good at like the technical downhills, because that's something that a lot of people struggle with, because there's mentality of going fast downhill is to kind of put the brakes on a bit, and you kind of get that in a thing that doesn't make you want to go flying down the hill. Is that something that you just never struggled with? You've just
and it's strange. Maybe I like it because it's probably the only part of running I'm faster than Casper at, is running down a technical hill. So that always makes me feel good. But in terms of why I'm like that, I don't know. I think it is probably partly just innate. But I skied from quite a young age, from about 3 or 4. And if you've ever seen a little 3 or 4, if you're used to skiing, you see these little French kids. They've just got no fear, have they? They go down without the poles. And I always wonder if, I don't have this fear of going fast down a hill because of that. I don't know. I don't know. The adrenaline rush I get from it, and sometimes you're sort of on the verge, and I almost feel like you need to feel like you're about to fall over, otherwise you should be going faster when you're going down a hill. And I don't know, I think maybe it's like physique as well. I'm not particularly tall, and I think and naturally the center of gravity is lower on a woman. So if you look at some of the good downhillers, they're quite small women as well. So I don't know, I think it's a mixture of maybe a few things, but I just I just don't, it's not something I've taught myself. It's just sort of, it's always just sort of been there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just clocked earlier when you said it, because I know that that's something a lot of people do struggle with, especially when they, you know, transfer to some of these more technical events and routes. Is it something you go out and practice now when you're training?
Not really. I mean, you know, when I can be in the lakes, I'll sort of run fast when I'm going down a hill. You know, I won't just carry on plodding. But I think that's more because I enjoy it. So I think, you know, you do need to keep your quads like conditioned, because you can't keep doing that and doing that. You know, I think that's what people struggle with. But I think, you've got to do it in your training. I mean, I'm very much, you know, train specifically for what event you're doing, and I know that's easier said than done, because it depends where you live and what event you're doing. But I think if you can try and you know, make the terrain you're running on as specific as the race you're going to do, I do think that really helps.
Yeah, no, definitely. And have you got any tips for anyone wanting to kind of progress into the more sort of mountain running, sky running? Because there's quite a few events now that some have like entry restrictions, don't they? I think some of them you can just enter as well, depending on your sort of experience. Have you got any tips for people wanting to kind of get into that, who might be?
Yeah, I think like just practice on the technical terrain, just get used to it, and not plan a whole route where it's, you know, it's technical the whole time, because these routes aren't technical the whole time. There'll be specific parts that and I know it's really easy to say and hard to do, but it's just that relaxing on the technical bits, and just sort of almost pretend that you're dancing. You've got to be so like light on your feet, and not, you've kind of got to look where you're going but not at the same time, because if you look where you're going, you sort of panic a bit more. But I think it's, you know, if I'm, you know, on the Glencoe skyline, for example, so there's 2 ridges, and before each of those ridges I would have a gel with caffeine in it, so just to help my alert, so I'm like super alert, because you've got to be like super alert on those bits. I mean, that just works for me. But I always think, you know, the longer they're further on in the race that the technical stuff is, the more dangerous it is, because that's when you're getting tired. So I think it's concentrate. I know, which might sound obvious, but I think, you know, I'm really concentrating on the although it might look flowy running down a hill, you're still like constantly sort of assessing and picking out your route. There's no need to take the most technical route. Like, pick up, you've got to go down this hill. You might like the technical stuff, but you might as well, you know, look ahead and see whether, you know, there's a natural path, for example. Make life easy for yourself.
Good tips. What are you like at eating and, you know, fueling yourself on these longer events as well? It's something a lot of people struggle with, and myself included, really. Is it something you find fairly straightforward, or
I think I've made it more straightforward over the years. I think I used to sort of, if I look back on the first Lakeland 100 I did, you know, I had all sorts in my pack, you know, and because, oh well, what if I fancied this, what if I fancied that? And actually now I just keep it really simple. And that includes what I eat for like the 3 days up to the race. Normally, like, you know, eat lots of fruit and veg and stuff, but I'll really cut that down, and, you know, my plate will probably be looking quite beige by the Friday before, because I think that makes quite a bit of difference, to sort of just keep things as simple as possible. I try and eat more like 2 days before, rather than like stuffing yourself the day before, because then you can, you know, if it's an early race, your food's not digested, and you sort of, then you don't really want to eat, and it's all just a bit funny. But in the race itself, I tend to just have the same thing now. That I'll just sort of eat at certain time intervals, and I try and be quite strict with myself of, okay, right, if I'm going to eat every 45 minutes on this race or every half an hour, no matter where I am, you know, if I'm going down a hill, if I'm going up a hill, if I'm on a flat, you know, just take the food, just get it done, and, you know, don't think about it, just put it down. Because I think where I've made mistakes in the past is I've thought, oh, I'll just get down to the bottom of this hill and then I'll have something. And then you forget, and then, you know, that might have been an extra 15 minutes, and actually that can make a huge difference, because then you're behind in what you're putting in you.
I think,
but I always have a magic, I tend to have gels a lot now, which I didn't used to, but I'll always have like a flat jacky thing in case I sort of generally get hungry on a longer race. But I'll always have a magic bar as well in my pack. And when I did the Lakeland 50 in 2017, I had a Boost bar, you know, just like a Cadbury's. Is it Cadbury's? I don't know. A Boost chocolate bar. And that's sort of my it's not always a Boost bar, it's whatever I feel like putting in my pack. And that is, you probably, that in all likelihood, if you have a 50-mile or plus race, you're going to have a bad moment and feel a bit but if you can produce one of your favorite chocolate bars out your bag, or just something, just whatever food you really like, it can have such a good like boost to you, or like, no pun intended, it can have such a good, you know, feeling. And then you go in your happy way again. So I always have I've been known to have a Freddo bar in my pack. I don't always have to eat the magic bar, because sometimes I don't feel too bad, but it's always there just in case. So that's my other tip for food.
I'm definitely going to try that on the next race, because that's something that I generally do. I'm a bit more functional with what I take with me, but then I never feel like the stuff that I've got with me. Get to a point where you've just had enough of it. So
I learned that from Jim Mann. I don't know if you Jim Mann's sort of a very, very good, really super long, and he was supporting when Casper and I did our Bob Graham, and he supported on legs 3 and 4. And you'll know, like, by that stage you don't really want to eat a huge lot, certainly not what you packed. And he had a selection of chocolate bars, you know, like a Boost and whatever, you know, all sorts of things. And he was like, what would you like? And so I picked one and had it. And then like an hour or so later, he was like, what would you like next? And I remember chatting to him, and he was like, you know, why not just eat your favorite chocolate bar on your run? I mean, it's not going to sustain you for the whole run, is it? But, you know, every now and again it's a good boost. So that's thanks to Jim Mann that I learned the magic chocolate bar trick.
Oh, nice. I really like that. I'm gonna give that one a go in the box of ammunition. You mentioned the Bob Graham there. You've done the Lakeland 50. You set the record on that, which still stands. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I always expect it to go each year, but it hasn't yet. I'm sure it will.
Day, you've got the record on that. Is that right?
Yeah, Leeds in a day. Yeah.
And then I was just looking at some of the events that you've done. You've been to the Trail World Championships, Mont Blanc 80k, and then we discussed a load of others earlier. The Glencoe Skyline as well. What's your ultimate favourite experience or event or place to run? What I don't know, you've got a massive selection of
it's so difficult, because like there's some races that like mean so much to me, and there might not actually be the best race or the best route, or I didn't run as I hoped to run, but they have like a special place with me. And one of those is Glencoe Skyline, and which was I did that a week before I got married, and a week after I'd done the Transalpine stage race. Which is, the Transalpine is a 7-day stage race and like across the Alps from Germany through Austria into Italy. And so Casper and I did that like 2 weeks before we got married, and but the Glencoe Skyline was part of the UK Sky Running Series, and you had to do 3 events, and I'd only done 2. So it was another one of my silly working from wherever I decided to work at that point. And I sort of, it was 2 weeks. We got back from the Glencoe skyline from the Transalp on the Monday, 7-day stage race. And then I was planning to do the Glencoe skyline like 6 days later, which was, I just needed to finish it to be part of the series. Yeah. And you can imagine, my mum's not a fretter at all, but she was like, is that a good idea? Like, shouldn't you be doing the final preparations for the wedding? I was like, it's fine, it's all sorted. And so I drove up to Glencoe on my own and camped out there. And I think because I had absolutely no expectation, no pressure on myself, because I just need to get around. And I thought, my legs are not going to move properly a week after that. And it was one of those races when I just sort of felt on top of the world, and I just felt like I could just like trot and fly up the hills and stuff. And it just it was a really magical race for me. It was maybe like the excitement of pre-wedding and stuff, but that particular, I've done it 3 times now, but it was that first year that was really special. But then, I pick other races, and like the first year I ran for GB at the Trail World Champs, it was, I never even expected to ever be on that team. And it was all just a bit of a, I still can't believe I'm here. And, so that was like really special, even though like the course wasn't particularly inspiring, but it was like the whole, experience of it. Which was super nice. But then like Tromsø in Norway, like that route is just like absolutely incredible. So I know I haven't really answered your question, but it's so hard to like say but then I can't go without mentioning the Lakeland 50, because that, as I've described before, that was the first trail race I did in 2011, and then in 2017 Casper and I both ran it, and both wanted to set the record. And it was obviously not easier for me to set the record. It was easier for me to know, because obviously once we're in the race we can't communicate, but I could, because he was ahead, I could ask at each checkpoint like who's winning. So I could get information on him. But then at the penultimate checkpoint they got mixed up, and they said, oh, there's no one called Casper has been through this checkpoint. Wow. And that like gave me a real hit, because I was like, if he was leading, it was giving me a boost to like keep going. But then they got mixed up and he had won and set the record. And that was just like super special, because I think because it had been our first trail race ever, and then to go back and 6 years later, that first, I remember when we first did it, and Debbie and Marco Consani both won the 100 that year.
Oh, okay.
And I remember, I'd never said it to anyone, not even Casper, and I was like, God, that's so cool. Like, imagine like a man and like a husband and wife being, on that podium together, both winning. And I never like expected I'd ever be able to do that. So that was super special as well. I think because it was our thing together. So yeah, it's really hard to say what your favorite race is, because there's so many, and I think that just shows like how emotional running is. Like sometimes I don't even remember the position of races I came in. I kind of remember how I was feeling on that day, and I think that's subsequently what matters. It doesn't matter what you come. It's how did that race make you feel, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, well, we do it for enjoyment, right? So
yeah.
I think if you're getting a kick from it and you're enjoying it, then it's doing what you set out to do. No, I'm not surprised you can't put a kind of a specific event on as your favorite, because you've got a pretty incredible choice to choose from. And the Lakeland sounds awesome when you both won it. Are both records still standing there as well?
They are at the moment.
Yeah.
But they could go. Well, that's what records are there to be broken, hey.
Yeah.
But if someone breaks it, I'm off back to try and get it back.
Do it.
Depending on how fast they do it. Yeah.
what about the kind of aspirations in the future? Have you got any events that you want to target? Any crazy stuff, you know, in over the years that coming up that you want to kind of tackle?
Yeah, it's funny. I'd never really thought about any of the US races.
Oh, yeah.
They've just sort of never really been on my radar. But then just over the last year or so, I started thinking about some of the US races, and I think, you know, I'd love to do like Hard Rock 100 one day and Western States. I mean, both very, very hard races to get into.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I've never raced in the US, and I think it would be, I think those two races I'd love to have a go at. Would be cool. And I will do the UTMB one day. I just, in the back of my mind, I think I should be able to do that when I'm like well into my 40s. So, but I probably can't do some of the short, well, I'll always be able to do the shorter ones, but maybe not as fast.
Yeah.
So I kind of think, oh, I'll do the shorter, I say shorter, you know, it's all relative, ones now. And then, you know, I will definitely do UTMB one day. It's just a case of when. I don't think it's going anywhere.
It's going to be around forever. Have you done any of that series at all?
I haven't, no. I was meant to do the CCC last year, but of course that didn't happen. So I thought I'd do the CCC and then maybe, you know, see how that goes. But I'd always been a bit of a, oh, it's so like commercial, it's so big. I don't like big races like that. But then every year I then like avidly follow it, you know, do very little work on that day. And then I'm like, oh, I wish I was there. So last year I thought, yeah, I'll definitely enter one of them. Yeah.
It's like the ultimate race, isn't it? In the sort of training.
Yeah.
And anyone who's anyone in ultra running is pretty much on that stage over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's on my bucket list. I'm still trying to get the points though for that one. I think I need to get another 5 or 6. So however many now.
So complicated, yeah.
Yeah, I was meant to go and do the CCC as well last year. So
oh, were you? Oh,
that's next on the list at some point in the near future. So yeah, we'll see how it all goes. But again, I think I said this to someone. I'd want to do it when you've got the full UTMB atmosphere, not kind of COVID atmosphere.
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah.
I'm not sure how it will look this year, but I don't know. We shall see in August.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Thank you so much for your time.
No, you're very welcome.
Having you on and hearing all about your sort of running adventures and what you've been up to. I'm sure there's a lot of inspiration there for people and events to check out and routes to check out. I'm going to go and look up the T round route.
Well, I'll watch out for you on that then.
Just to see what it's like. Sounds good. But yeah, no, hopefully we'll speak to you again soon. But thanks very much.
Yeah, super. Well, lovely to chat and enjoy whatever adventures we are able to do this year.
We'll see how it goes. But where can we catch you? Is Instagram the best place for like?
Yeah, probably. I use that probably the most. Yeah.
And what's your username on there?
It's katie.kaars.sijpesteijn. So good luck with spelling that. But I think if you like Katie Kaars, I think it then is obvious which one it is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, no, thanks so much. We'll be keeping an eye out for what you're up to over the next few months for sure.
Super. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
and we'll speak soon, I'm sure.
That's cool. And then we'll be back here next week for trail runs on YouTube, and you can catch what we're up to at Trail Runs UK on Instagram, Trail Runs on Facebook, and trailruns.co.uk. All the information is on there. So thanks very much.